And hello, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of Deutsche Küche in den USA, where our lovely host, Melissa Zimmerman, shows you how to make traditional German recipes using ingredients available at any US supermarket or farmer's market or any market that you can think of. We're so glad that you could be here today. My name is Cassidy, and I am the Communications and Program Director at the Goethe-Zentrum Atlanta. We are the ones putting on this event with Melissa, and we are the German and Cultural Center of the Southeast. So we have cultural events like this wonderful series, as well as other series, such as a theater series going on also right now, sort of simultaneously along the Deutsche Küche series. We also have a Germanic language and dialect series and other smaller language and cultural events throughout the years, in addition to our language courses. So if there's any non-German speakers or German learners in the Zoom room, you can learn online with us with our German language courses and just better your German skills and get into the level that you're looking to get into. So for this episode, it is meant to be interactive and engaging. So we do want you to feel free to unmute yourself at any time and ask questions for Melissa. It's sometimes hard for her to read the chat. So if you want to write something in the chat, I will read it to her aloud, or you can feel free to just unmute yourself and say it to her during the episode. But we do ask that you keep your mics muted if you're not asking a question, just so there's not too much background noise, especially in the kitchen with the clanking pans. And yeah, cameras on, cameras off, whatever you're most comfortable with. If you're cooking along with Melissa, we hope that you put your cameras on so we can see your progress along with her and so that we can show her how you're doing. And you'll also receive, we're also recording this event, as I said at the beginning, so it'll be posted to YouTube within 48 hours, so by Monday. And then you will get a follow-up email on Monday as well with another copy of the recipe in case you didn't get the original, and a link to the recording and any other relevant information to the future episodes. And with all of that, I will hand it off to our wonderful host, Melissa.
Thank you. I know we have some new people, some people who already joined last week, and I'm really excited that you guys are back. I'm just going to introduce myself real quick one more time. So as Cassidy already said, my name is Melissa. I'm originally born and raised in Germany, but I came to the US in 2015. So I'm here now a little bit over 5 years. And I always had a passion for cooking and baking. And yeah, just recently, it's like a year ago, I thought, well, you know, it's time to focus a little bit more on that passion. So I did a culinary program at the Kennesaw State University, which is an awesome program. It's more like an apprenticeship. In German, we would call it like Ausbildung. So not only was I doing school, but also we had to work in really famous and high cuisine restaurants within the Atlanta region. Like, was really fun. I was in the Four Seasons Hotel, was there in the pastry department, which obviously was some really great tasting pastries over there. And then in Canoe, that's also really nice restaurant, and then also in Seed. So if you have not checked those out, go ahead. I can only recommend them, and the team is awesome. And yeah, I'm really excited today to lead you through one of my favorite cakes. It's called Käsekuchen, so it's the German version of cheesecake. And yeah, so I hope you guys are ready, and we're gonna start baking a little bit today. I'm gonna show you two different recipes. So the first one that I'm gonna show is it's a pear or apple crumble cheesecake. It's more something with a little bit of fruit, and obviously in summer you can swap out the foods with different types, but I think it's just a nice version for Thanksgiving next week. So if you want to have a little German dish there, I think that's a perfect one. And it's also really easy to make, you will see that. And then also I'm going to show you after that, when that's in the oven, a really like classic German cheesecake recipe. So German cheesecake, or cake in general in Germany, is a lot less sweet than American cake. So if you have ever been around Germans, then you know that cake is really part of our culture, and that there are a lot of buffets, and we like to meet friends in the afternoon, or we go by ourselves. And also at home, we have a lot of cake, and it's just like a tradition to either after your lunch, or in the afternoon, you have Kaffee und Kuchen. So that's coffee and cake. And yeah, I just love German cake, to be honest. And just to clarify, German chocolate cake is not German at all. So when I came to the US and I heard about German chocolate cake, I'm like, what is that? And I checked it out, I'm like, yeah, that's not German. So I researched it, and it's actually called German because the guy who invented it, his last name was German. So I had to say this because I don't want you to think that this is a German cake. But in general, our cakes are a lot less sweet. When I tried, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but when I tried American cake the first time, like the traditional birthday cake that people get from Publix or so, then I had like a sugar high, a little sugar shock. But yeah, I hope you guys can just bake along and you will see that we don't use a lot of sugar, and the cake is still very tasty in the end. And yeah, as Cassidy also already said, please make this interactive. I want to see what you guys are making. I want to see your results. So I'm gonna, in between, I'm gonna go to the camera and I'm gonna ask you to show what you're doing. But also, please always feel free to put questions in the chat or just unmute yourself and just ask me, and I'm gonna be really happy to explain it to you. With that being said, as I said already before, please make sure that your oven is already on. For the first cake, we're gonna use 360 Fahrenheit. And what I found, I'm sure that some of you who bake a little bit more often, they notice that, is that sometimes when I bake a recipe, my cake is either not done when the time says it should be done, or it has been done already beforehand. That sometimes can be because every oven is a little bit different, and also the temperature a lot of times does not actually is not what it says on the display. So for that, if you feel like your oven is a little bit off, there's something like an oven thermometer. You can get that on Amazon. It's like $7 or so, and it's just nice to put it in the oven and to kind of know how accurate your oven is. And if you did notice, okay, that it's a few degrees less or higher than what your display actually says, you can kind of adjust that. That's just as a little tip. And then another thing for baking is that you always want to put your refrigerated ingredients out of the fridge about an hour before baking, because that's just they will mix much better and incorporate much better with the dry ingredients. So your result is going to be a lot better in the end, and you have like a fluffier cake. Because if some of you already baked before, maybe you use some butter or some cream cheese before, and then you had like little lumps or so. And that's usually when the temperature is too cold and it's just a little off compared to the dry ingredients. So we want to avoid that and want to put the eggs and all that stuff out of the oven way before we start baking. And with that being said, I think let's just go ahead and we're going to start with the dough for the crumble cake. And so I said you can do either pears or apples. I tried both. It's both really tasty, I think. I'm going to do pears today. I honestly like that a little bit better. It had just like a little bit of a sweeter taste that I found really matching to the whole cake. But you can do either or, whatever tickles your fancy. So we're gonna go ahead. We need a kitchen scale, and I mentioned that already last time in my session. As you can see, my recipes are based on the metric system, on grams, because for baking, you just want to be really precise or accurate with your ingredients, and you just want to use the metric system because it's a little bit more accurate. And I think there are some questions already.
The first question is actually about last week. If you could post a link or maybe send it via email, and I'll share it to everybody for the spätzle maker that you specifically bought from Amazon, because there's a couple and we just want to make sure that Barbara wants to make sure that she's using the same one that you did. Okay. And then Barrett is wondering, can you use a stand mixer in place of a hand mixer?
Yeah, sure. I have a KitchenAid too, so you can totally use a stand mixer. That's completely fine. Whatever is best for you, you can use. Right, okay, I would say let's go ahead. So we're gonna need a big bowl. the dough, we are just gonna put all the ingredients in the bowl first. So we're gonna start with 300 grams of all-purpose flour. Make sure this is on grams. Then we need 170 grams of butter. So if your butter is not soft right now, what you can do is you can either quickly place it into your oven and it's gonna get a little softer, or obviously you can put it in the microwave. Mine is kind of soft. I'm gonna see, I might put it in there for just a second. It's just gonna be easier to net the dough because the first dough is one that we're gonna net with our hands, so we have another little workout like last week. And obviously, if you're using a stand mixer, you can also use the dough hook for this. All right. You just don't want it to be melted though. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna measure out the butter separately first. It's 170 grams. All right. Because to make it easier then to net the dough, I'm just gonna cut it into smaller pieces. Because the smaller you're gonna have your pieces, it's then easier to just spread the butter and net it to a smooth dough. So, nice preparation is always good to make your life easier. All right. And I think I mentioned it also last week. So concerning the butter, I like to buy this blue crab butter because what I noticed is that just the regular butter sticks that you find in the store, if you look at them, you see that once you cut a little piece off, that there's like a little rand, what's the word for rand? Surrounding around the butter. It's like a little bit darker, and I always wondered what that is. And I researched a little bit, and apparently, so sometimes they put some water into the butter, and also some butter has been frozen before. And just that blue crab butter it's just like the original like high-fat butter, and it just makes a nicer result in the end for baking. And if you don't find this one, you can also use the Kerrygold. That's also a good one. But yeah, I just noticed that, and since then I just used that butter instead. So once you cut the butter, you're just gonna kind of sprinkle it over the flour. All right. I hope everyone is prepared to be a little messy today. Please with your cookers. And then we're gonna need some brown sugar. If you don't have brown sugar, you can totally use the regular granulated sugar. It's just gonna give a little bit of a nicer flavor for this kind of cake. It pairs really well with the apples or with the pears. And we're gonna need 100 grams. All right. And then we need a pinch of salt. And a pinch, whoops, that's not supposed to go in there. And a pinch, usually you're gonna take 3 fingers, your thumb, your pointer finger, and your middle finger. And that's not a really good bowl to do that, but it's just you kind of pinch like in there, and that's really just a pinch. And we are also gonna add some cinnamon. And that really, you could do the 1 teaspoon, or if you are really a cinnamon lover, you can obviously put in a little bit more. And it gives it a nice fall or Christmas flavor. All right, so now comes the work. And we are gonna net that into a nice dough. That's why it's important that your butter is nice and soft, and it will just help to net everything. So what I first do, and I hope you guys can see that really well, is I'm just kind of crumbling through my hands and make the butter pieces small. And then you're just gonna go ahead and start netting until this forms a nice smooth dough. Might take a few minutes, but it will be worth it. So we're gonna earn our cake. And you can really try to dig in with your with the bottom of your palm, where you have just much more strength and can really net the dough together.
A question from Barbara: if you didn't want to maybe use your hands, would a pastry fork or cutter be appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, you can do that the way it's easiest for you. There's no rule. It should just be a smooth dough at the end. So if you have anything to make it easier for you, go ahead. And sometimes if you feel like that the ingredients aren't going to stick with each other, you can just add just a few drops of water, and it might just be a little easier than that all the ingredients are just going to stick together. But usually they will. It's just going to take a little while.
And Dagmar called it ein Mürbeteig.
Ein Mürbeteig, correct. Very good. Nice pronunciation, Cassidy.
Danke sehr.
I have a question. Is it a Mürbeteig if there's no egg in it?
That's another good question. That might just be a Knetteig. I'm not sure, because for the classic cheesecake, it's a Mürbeteig, and that's where the egg comes in. So I think this one is just a crumble dough, because we are going to use a third of that dough for the crumbs. So yeah, I think you're completely right about that. Nice correction here.
I don't know. So it's called a Knetteig then, if there's no egg in it?
It's a Streuselteig.
Streuselteig.
Streuselteig, because the crumbles in German are called Streusel.
Okay.
We are just going to use the same dough for the bottom as well as for the Streusel.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so you can see that my dough is slowly coming together. Cassidy, can you switch to gallery view without me having to do it? So I can see people.
I don't know that I can control your screen.
Okay. Yeah,
I can if you let me, actually. There's a way to do that on Zoom that I became aware of recently. So if you wanted us to do that, that's totally possible. But otherwise, no. I can see everybody on gallery view.
Okay. Yeah, mine is at the side. I want to check in a second and see if people are working as hard as I am here.
I see Beverly and Roger. I see their doughs hard at rubbing. Is anybody else? Susie and Francie, are you guys cooking along? Can we see your dough? No, they're not cooking along. Okay. I know this is definitely the arm workout for the week, so you don't have. You can skip arm day this week, everybody, if you're making this dough.
For sure.
Don't skip leg day, but skip arm day.
Yeah. And also, so the dough does not have to be completely one ball together, because we are just gonna press it on the bottom of the pan. So if it's just nice and incorporated, you can see it's like nice and sticky, then that should be completely fine. Because what we're gonna do, you just want it to be like smooth and you feel like there's no big butter chunks in it, and that's fine. That's why, because it's a crumble dough. So at the end we are gonna crumble the rest of it on top of the cake. So once it's nice and sticky, that's completely fine. And then we're gonna take our pan. So I think mine is a 13 by 9 by 2 inches. If yours is a little bigger or smaller, that's not an issue. It might just be that then your cake is going to be a little less higher or a little higher. And you just might have to adjust the baking time a little bit, but other than that, it's not a problem. So we're going to take about 2/3 of the dough and place it into the baking pan. I think that's kind of, and then what we're gonna do is we want to press it down. And what if you have, you can either take an empty glass, like a glass jar, or I have this little dough roller from Pamper Chef. It's kind of nice. It has a little bigger roll and a little smaller roll. So that's kind of helpful too, to press the dough. But otherwise, you can really also just use your hands and press down the dough. And you just want to make it a nice even layer. And if you feel like if it's a little too dry, as I said, add a little bit of water, and it's going to be a little bit more sticky.
And Heiko is wondering if they can freeze the cakes after they let them sit for a while to cool down.
Yeah, I think that's not a problem. You just want to make sure it's nicely, it's like wrapped or something like that, and then you should be able to freeze it. What you can also do, if you want to make the dough ahead, you can also wrap it into plastic foil and just freeze the dough, but that should not be a problem. And you just want to, sorry, go ahead.
No, finish.
You just want to go ahead and take it out of the freezer. Maybe if you want to serve it in the evening, you want to take it out in the morning, so it's unfrosted. And put it in the fridge first, maybe, and then, yeah, it should unfrost.
And then maybe once your hands are free, if you wouldn't mind going and changing to gallery view, Barrett is wondering if you could check out their dough, since the consistency is a bit off.
Let me see. Okay.
You see Barrett Lehman?
Yes, so is the consistency more dry or is it more wet? I just cannot see that.
Can you tell her that it's?
Yeah, it's just drier than what you have.
So just add a little bit of water.
Okay.
And then it should be fine. Just go step by step. So you don't want it to be too wet, but just drop a little bit in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm gonna add a little bit more here. You just want to make sure it's nice and even over the whole pan.
So Melissa, do you want it about a centimeter deep?
Melissa, I'm not sure if you could hear that. Beverly, you're kind of quiet, but she was
Yeah,
asking
sorry.
how deep it should be, about a centimeter or higher.
In the yeah.
It should
Not
just
so thick.
it's probably maybe a half of a centimeter. So it's not like thick. It's maybe this
Okay,
high. So
good.
you really just want the pan to be covered, and then have
Thank
a
you.
kind of a third of the dough left.
Thanks.
That's about it. Just so it's a nice covering. Just gonna make it a little bit flat. Just gonna wash my hands quickly. Okay, I'm gonna check the gallery view very quick. Looks good, looks good. Okay, and when you've done that, we are just gonna place the pan in the fridge until we finish the rest. And we just keep the remaining third of the crumble dough at the side, and we're gonna use it later. Okay, so next we're gonna use our fruit. So in my case, I'm gonna use the pears, and you can do 3 or 4. That depends on how many you want, how big yours are. I'm just gonna see until when I go along how much I need. But we are want to peel them first, and then we are gonna cut them. So I use some barlett pears here, but you can use any other kind obviously as well. And if you want to do this cake in the summer, you can, for example, use peaches. I think that would taste really, really well as well. Peeler. Is everyone good with their dough so far? I take silence as a yes.
I think everyone's hands are busy, exactly, so they can't unmute themselves to answer you. Looks like Roger's at the peeling the pears. I assume those are pears. I can't really see that closely. Peeling the pears stage. Who else is cooking with their cameras on? I think that's it for now. You kind of talked about it a little bit, Melissa, for the cultural importance of Küchen in Deutschland. But is this a celebratory cake in your opinion, Käsekuchen, or when would it be served? All the time?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's especially, I would say, during Frühling, like spring or summer, because there are a lot of variations where you can make it, you know, pair it really nice with fruit. And you will see with the classic cake, I'm going to add some lemon juice and a little bit of lemon peel into it. So it has like this little refreshing taste to it. But there are also a ton of like winter variations where you can even for the bottom of the cake, you know how you use, for example, for also in the US a lot of times you use like, for example, an Oreo bottom where you just crumbled all the Oreos and then you add some melted butter and you make like a nice like a cookie bottom of the cake. And you can, for example, use the Spekulatius cookies that I think they have them at Aldi here. That's just like a nice winter taste with the cinnamon and all the other spices in it. And then you can also add some chocolate even to the actual cheesecake filling and make it either completely chocolate or you can marble it. That's also a nice variation. But I think it's definitely a cake for the warmer times as well, because it tastes great with some berries. And then I have also a recipe where I use some chocolate or cacao powder in the crumbles, and then it's paired with the berries, and it's just like, it's really good. But good question. Okay. I hope you all have a sharp knife, and if you don't, we know it's that Black Friday is coming up, so there are a lot of sales going on, so I hope you're going to invest in a nice set of knives. I'm obviously using a German one. This is from Zwilling, but they also have Wursthof and plenty others, but it will just make your life easier, especially with pears because they're kind of slippery, so you want to make sure that you are safe. So the smaller you are going to slice your fruits, the softer they're going to become when you bake them later. So that's completely up to you. So you want to take out the core. So I'm just going to quarter it and take the cores out.
Dagmar says she also likes the Zwillinger knives, and that's actually what I also use. So go Team Zwilling.
They are just really good and really sharp. All right. So now you're going to go ahead and cut it. I'm just going to get another little bowl. And I think I'm just going to have mine and then go ahead and cut these into little pieces. I think they don't need too small. You just want to kind of make them even, so they will just bake also nice and evenly. So if someone is going to try and cut with a big knife, you always want to have, so your grip should be, how do you call this? It's almost like a claw, but you're going to put, my hands are really slippery right now, but you basically take your pointer finger and your thumb, and you kind of place the knife in between, and it's almost like you hold the knife with both of them on the other side, and then you lay your hand over the rest of the handle, and then you have really nice control because you're just gonna hold it with your both fingers and let the knife just do the rest of the work. And then for your other hand, you want to make sure it's like the typical the chef's claw, because you don't want to cut your fingers off like I did before, but you only do that once a lot of times. So you want to have that claw and then have the knife go alongside your middle finger, and that just will prevent you from cutting yourself. Also be careful of your pinky and your thumb. You just want to leave it in the bag, but then you just go ahead and you will always have the knife on your middle finger and just go alongside the movement. So it's actually really safe. It takes practice. I was really intimidated first when I had to cut with that knife, and I had a little accident too, but didn't happen again. But obviously in the pastry section, you just don't cut that much. But then when I went to the next restaurant, I had to cut a ton because obviously they gonna take the interns and have them do the work that a lot of people don't want to do. So trust me, I had some nice like blisters on my fingers because I was cutting a lot. But it's also a really nice reward to see how fast you are just gonna learn, and then you just get comfortable with the knife.
And Barbara was wondering if a springform pan is big enough for this recipe. I guess it depends on the size of the springform pan, maybe.
I think I put down, is it 10 inches? But I think that should be completely fine. It might be that you have to bake it maybe a little longer because the cheesecake filling is just going to be higher. But yeah, you can totally use a springform, no problem.
And yes, 10 inches is what you put down on the recipe. So if anybody else is using a springform pan, 10 inches would be the ideal.
All right. So if you don't like because the fruit is now, the oxygen is going to brown your fruit a little bit. So if you don't like that, you can just put a little bit of lemon juice over it. And that will just prevent it from browning. So just mix it a little bit and that should be fine. Okay. Now we're gonna go ahead with the filling. Leave the pan. Okay, so for the filling, we're gonna have 3 eggs. And we need a stand mixer. And then first of all, we're gonna use the eggs and the sugar and cream it. Just 3 eggs. And 120 grams of sugar. And then you're gonna just cream it nice and smooth. And I'm gonna go ahead a little bit faster now because I wanna make sure that I can show you the finished cake. It takes 45 minutes, but please go ahead and stop me if I'm too fast. Hope you can see that. Just so they are nicely incorporated. And then, so you might have asked yourself, what is actually the difference between German cheesecake, Käsekuchen, and the American cheesecake? American cheesecake is usually made with cream cheese. German cheesecake is made with something that's called Quark. It's also a nice word for you to practice to say. I had a lot of friends try to say that before, and it's kind of funny. But Quark is kind of like Greek yogurt, but it's even a little bit stiffer. And that just, you will see, that makes the cheesecake just a little lighter because it's very high in protein and it has no fat, and it's just, yeah, it's just much lighter. In this variation, we are gonna mix the quark, or in this case, because honestly in the US, we don't really find quark, at least I haven't yet. But I know there are some versions of quark, but usually they are flavored. That's actually not really something we have in Germany. But we are gonna also put in a little bit of cream cheese and also a little bit of sour cream. It's gonna be a nice creamy variation. But you will see later when I do the classic German cheesecake, the main ingredient is gonna be the quark. Or what I like to use here in the US is the skyr. It's from Iceland, skyr, but I feel like it's a little bit more stiff than the Greek yogurt, but the Greek yogurt, the 0% fat, is completely fine and good to use as well. So we are gonna use 250 grams. And you can just add all of that into one bowl. Okay. And as I said, we're also going to add some cream cheese for this variation. Makes it a little more creamy. And we need 300 grams. So I think one package has, 226 grams. So we're gonna need a little bit more than one. And honestly, so I tried a lot of variations of cream cheese before, but I always come back to the Philadelphia one, and this is not sponsored or something. If they want to go ahead and sponsor me, that's fine. Maybe they see that, but somehow, I don't know what it is, but it's just, I don't know, it just makes the cake better. It has a different consistency, and it just, I think it makes it just nicer. But obviously you can use any other cream cheese as well. Just make sure that they are all room temperature. Right. And for the cream cheese, you always want to use the full fat variation. It's just gonna give you a better consistency. And then we are also going to add a little bit of sour cream. In German, you're going to use the Schmand. And we're going to use 100 grams.
Dagmar says she got the Siggy's non-fat vanilla, and since it's flavored, she'll just leave off the vanilla ingredients that are also in the recipe.
That works too. You would just have to use the cornstarch, because that's what's gonna hold it together. All right. And we're gonna use a little bit of cream. So I just took the regular whipping cream, and we are just gonna add 50 grams. And while you're putting all of these into your bowl, you can probably see that the consistency of all three of those is just a little different, and that's what's gonna give you that nice creamy filling in the end. Okay, I'm gonna start to mix that together. I'm making a little bit of a mess. That's okay. All right. That's why we have aprons. And as you saw in the recipe, so the last ingredient that I listed is the Dr. Oetker pudding pulver. So this is something a lot of German recipes are going to use. It's just kind of the standard, but what you can substitute that with, because if you read the ingredients, it's literally just starch and some a little bit of salt and some vanilla flavor to it. They have that also now, I think, here in the US. I looked it up. They also, I think they have it at World Market, or you can order it online. The only thing that I don't like is that they put yellow 5 in it. That's something that's forbidden in Germany, but yeah, you will find this. Otherwise, maybe they have somewhere the German one. Sometimes they have it in the little European markets also. But if you don't have that, just use 40 grams of cornstarch and add some vanilla extract as well.
Dagmar was wondering if you could use flour as a thickening agent instead of the cornstarch.
Yeah, I know some recipes totally use flour. I honestly have never tried it, but I'm pretty sure it works, because a lot of the classic recipes, they also use flour. The one I'm showing later, I'm going to use the cornstarch instead of the pudding mix, but I think flour is totally fine as well. And then we're just going to mix that. The Dr. Oetker, the pudding powder, it just has a kind of a specific taste. It tastes really good. Also to make it as just a pudding. I'm not sure if you could substitute it with like another pudding that you have here in the store. I've not tried it, but it might work as well.
Linda's wondering if tapioca starch could be a substitute for cornstarch.
Yeah, totally. That's totally fine. Or arrowroot starch. I think as long as it's a starch that holds it together, then as a thickening agent, that should be fine. Okay, once we have all that mixed together, I'm gonna take the pan out of the fridge.
And Melissa, when you get back, Michelle's wondering what was the ingredient that you said is forbidden in Germany?
It's the yellow 5. It's what makes the color. So they use it here in like Fanta, I guess it's also in 7-Up or so. It's just a color thing, but yeah, it's forbidden in Germany. We have a lot more strict regulation when it comes to preservatives or any other kind of food, other ingredients that you can find here in food, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. So we are, instead of putting can you see that? Yeah. We're gonna put a little bit of the fruit on the bottom of the cake. So you're just gonna take some of your fruit, either pears or apples, and spread it over the dough. And you can use as many as you like. And if you don't want them on the bottom, you don't need to put them on the bottom. You can literally just put them on top of the cheesecake, filling them. Just a nice even layer. All right. And then we are gonna put the filling on top. As you can see, I really had a thing for pink in the past. A lot of my stuff here is pink. All right. And you just want to make sure that it's nice and even. We're gonna put it on the how do you call that? Just like put it on the kitchen counter a few times, make some noise, but it will just make that the bubbles are gonna disappear in the filling. So be a little loud. I hope no one in your house is taking a nap. And then you're just gonna use the remaining fruit, and you're just gonna crumble it in there.
And about how long are you going to be mixing the fillings to make sure it doesn't crack? Barbara's wondering.
Just until it's nicely incorporated and smooth. That's about it. Just so you see that all the ingredients are mixed into each other. So that's fine. And for the end, we are just going to use our remaining crumble dough. And you can smush it together a little bit before you do that. Hope you can see that. And then obviously it's your taste if you like bigger crumbles or smaller crumbles, but I'm just gonna go ahead and spread those nice and evenly.
And did you grease your pan before putting anything in to reduce burning or sticking on the sides? Dagmar asks.
No, I didn't. You can put a little bit of butter on it if you want to. I felt like it's not needed for this one, to be honest. And I know some people, they also like to put some parchment paper down, but I feel like this went out perfectly out of the pan just because of the dough itself has some butter in it, and I think it was just fine to take it out of the pan afterwards. But you can put a little bit of butter on the bottom. That should be totally fine. All right. And I'm gonna go ahead and put mine in the oven real quick. So maybe you guys can still see the final result then. So you wanna put it in the, kind of in the middle of your oven. So it bakes nice and evenly. And you always want to use the bake setting on your oven too. Okay. I'm gonna wash my hands and then I wanna see how everyone's doing. And maybe I should also set a timer.
Oh, and I missed Dagmar's earlier comment. She said you can also buy the pudding, the Dr. Özke, on Amazon, and she posted a link in the chat. So if anybody wants to stock up on Dr. Özke pudding, go ahead and go support Amazon. Oh, and if you're on Amazon, be sure to use Amazon Smile, and that way a few cents of your purchase will go to the charity of your choosing. And you could select Friends of Goethe, which is the Goethe-Zentrum, our nonprofit, if you would like to support us with your purchases always on Amazon.
Nice, see? 2 birds with one stone. Yeah, I think there's hardly anything Amazon does not have nowadays. So I'm just gonna check in with you guys. So it's gonna be in the oven for 45 minutes, plus minus. Okay, I see some cakes here. Nice. Very nice. Parents, your cake looks great. Oh, Barbara, nice.
Thank you.
Sure. Perfect. And yeah, just keep an eye on your cake, depending on what form you used. Just make sure. So it's gonna, when it's done, it's gonna be a little bit golden, but not too much. And the middle of it can still be kind of wobbly. But because usually what you should do is you're gonna turn off the oven and you're gonna let it cool in the oven for like 10 minutes with the door open, and it will solidify while it's cooling, and then it will be fine later. Okay. Do we have any questions out there, or can I go ahead with the other recipe? How is it?
I think that's all the questions from the chat right now. If anybody wants to throw any more out there.
Perfect. I'm just gonna clean this real quick.
So you know Melissa's a really good cook because she cleans as she goes. My kitchen is not as clean as hers.
1 second. I was not able to hear you. Could you sit here?
No, you're fine. I was just complimenting how you clean as you go because I don't do that. And I think that shows that you're a real chef. You keep your kitchen clean.
I try, but still, a lot of times it looks like a bomb exploded after I'm done. So that's why you have dishwashers. Alrighty, I hope you guys can finish while I keep going. So I just want to show you like a complete classic cheesecake, a German cheesecake. As I said, there are a ton of recipes out there, but I'm going to show you this one, which I found was really easy to make and just really nice, has a really nice taste. I'm just going to do the complete plain version, but as I said, you can totally put in some fruit if you want to. In summer, you can put some, that's my kind of my mom's signature cake. She puts some, in Germany we have like little mandarins in the little cans, so she puts that in, or you can obviously use some peaches, which taste great as well. I think now for winter, I think some dark cherries would be fine, and they have frozen at Publix, for example. I like to use those, like the sour cherries. Yeah, or you can even marble the cake and put half of the filling aside, and then you're just gonna put some cacao powder in it, and then just put both of the fillings in it, and then just marble it a little bit. It's also really good. Yeah, but this one I'm gonna make into in a spring pan form. And we're also gonna start with the dough again. Right, I think we're just gonna go ahead. We're gonna use the flour, 230 grams. And then we're gonna use half a teaspoon of baking powder.
Can you say again what your mom's signature cake was with the fruit? Dagmar didn't get to hear it.
It's the classic cheesecake recipe, but then put the little mandarins that you find in a can, and put that in it. That tastes just really nice and refreshing. Or you can use peaches. That will taste really good as well. Okay, so we have the flour. We're gonna add the baking powder. We're gonna add 75 grams of sugar. And as you can see with the recipes, is that really the sugar is always lower than the amount of the flour. And that just shows you that there's just not that much in it. So basically, that's my allowance for you to eat cake and don't feel guilty. Because for example, this one, when I test like that, my husband and I, we had that even for breakfast. It's really not that bad for you. And it was just a nice, different thing for breakfast. Yes, parents, I eat cake for breakfast sometimes, it's okay. Then we're just gonna add a little bit of salt. We're gonna add some butter again. Gonna get another plate. Here also you wanna make sure the butter is softened. We're gonna need 120 grams. And in this case, we're also going to need an egg. Here we have our Mürbeteig. I'm going to cut the butter into small pieces again. Also, when you preheat your oven, you always want to make sure you turn it on kind of like almost half an hour before you bake, because even though it tells you sometimes that it's preheated, it's just not the case, and you want to make sure that the heat is really evenly in your oven. So if you give it a little bit longer, it's just kind of better to get an even result. Gonna crumble the butter into the flour mixture again. And then also for the cheesecakes, my personal opinion is that they taste even better when you make them a day ahead and then eat them not until the next day, because I feel like they taste the best once they are really cooled through, and then just they are completely set, and just like the flavor is completely developed. But I'm gonna eat mine too already today. So we are gonna have a little Friendsgiving today with some other German friends, and we don't really have turkey in Germany. So we are gonna make a goose, also something really tasty. So also with this dough, another arm workout. So we're just gonna net that to a nice even dough. I'm glad I focused on legs this morning in the gym and not on arms. And obviously you can also net the dough on your kitchen counter. Just put a little bit of flour on the kitchen counter and then net it all the way smooth. And you will see, so this one really is gonna be a nice firm dough because it's not the crumble dough and has the egg that just keeps everything nice and together.
Rob says that in southern Florida or southeastern Florida, geese are really expensive. The smallest one you can find is about $50. Do you know of any way to find cheaper geese to cook for a German Thanksgiving?
I would have to ask my friends because they got the goose, so I would ask them tonight, and then I will let Cassidy know, and then she can pass the info along. I know my friend's husband went hunting last weekend, but I think he did not go hunt for a goose. But who knows? I don't think so. All right, so you will see that it's just a nice Mürbeteig. It stays nice and sticky. So usually for this recipe, they are wrapping the dough into the plastic foil first and then put them in the fridge for like 30 minutes, and then it's just gonna make it a little bit more stiff, and then you can roll it out on your kitchen counter, on your flour kitchen counter, with like this is like a French baking pin or so. But also for time reason, I think you also don't really need to do that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and continue, and I put it straight into the spring form. So what we want to do is this dough, we don't want to just put it on the bottom of the pan. We also want to create some nice edges. So I also for this one I did not put any butter or something on it. I just think it's not needed. So I'm just gonna go ahead and spread the dough. And honestly, this dough is really forgiving, so you cannot really do a lot of things wrong with this. That's also just a nice feature. So you want to...
I was gonna say, Roger says Susie's doing great.
Okay, I'm glad. And it's just honestly most of the time easiest to use your fingers. just want to spread the dough nice and even. And then also on the edges. And you want to kind of pull it up maybe about like 2 inches high. And sometimes the dough likes to kind of sit in the edge of the pan. You just want to make sure to either spread it up along the edges or then put it along on the bottom of the pan. That's why I like this little tool, because it's just nice to get into the little edges as well. Yeah, so the dough is really soft now, so it can happen that it just rips apart a little bit, but that's okay.
Barrett's asking Montse and David are asking where you can buy the roller that you're using.
This is from the Pampered Chef. And sometimes it might be easier to roll it out on your kitchen counter first, but sometimes when you then try to transfer the dough into the pan, it just can kind of rip apart again. So you just need to make it work for you. It's just really soft right now, but that's okay. But taking a little bit. All right. It's kind of even in the middle. And then for the edges, you can use a cookie cutter, or you can just take a knife and make it a little even, but that's not really a must. I'm gonna leave it as it is right now, and I put it in the fridge while we make the filling, and then I'm just gonna do the finishing touches when I'm done with the filling. So it's literally just the dough spread around the pan, and then you just put it up the edges about like 2 inches. Alrighty, so the filling is also very easy. Get some water first. And for this one, we are going to separate the eggs. So you want to make sure that your the tools you're using are nice and clean and don't have any fat or so on it, because that will prevent the egg whites from getting stiff. So we're gonna need 4 eggs. So I'm gonna, oops, that's not what should happen. We're gonna separate the eggs from the egg whites from the egg yolks. And we don't want any eggshell in there. That will give a nice crunch. Not necessarily a nice one though. Alright. And then you want to stiffen up the egg whites really so that they are nice, like a really stiff peak. So I will show that to you.
I don't know. Can you hear me, Melissa, right now?
Go ahead.
Rob was just curious if the egg whites at room temperature are easier to whip than cold eggs.
I'm not sure if they are easier to whip, but I think it's just better than in the end to mix them into the rest of the fillings when they have all the same temperature. So usually it goes pretty fast. And some recipes, they only call for a soft peak, and you see, once you can see kind of the pattern happening, the line, that's when it's already a soft peak. And that will just then make sure that our cake is nice and fluffy later. So I think we are already good here. And how you can test it, you can kind of put your finger in it, and that's, if it kind of keeps sticking out, you know it's good. Looks like a little bird. Okay. And we are just gonna set that to the side. That's what we're gonna use last. And what we're gonna do next, actually, we're gonna use some butter. And we want to melt it, and it also should cool down a little bit. So we're gonna use 80 grams. So it's not that much. And this time, you really want it to be melted. Oops. Okay. So I'm just going to start with 30 seconds. And in the meantime, I'm going to check on the cake. Also, what you want to avoid is that when you check on what's in the oven, you don't want to open the oven door a lot, because that would just mean that the heat is going to go out of the oven, and that can really influence then also your cake. So if you have a window and you have a light, just make sure to peek through that. Maybe a few more seconds. To another 15.
And Montse and David are asking if a pinch of salt or cream of tartar could help the egg whites rise when you're beating them.
I've never tried it, to be honest. I think they just work well with just the egg whites, to be honest. But yeah, usually sometimes you can put in some sugar. That would help too. Or in Germany, a lot of recipes they call for vanilla sugar. So sometimes when you beat the egg whites, that's what you put into the egg whites already, the vanilla sugar. And also for this recipe, if you have the luxury of getting some vanilla beans, that tastes really, really nice as well, obviously. Okay, so we melted the butter. I'm just gonna let this cool a little bit, because obviously we don't wanna pour the hot butter then into our cold ingredients or colder ingredients. So we just wanna have it cool a little bit. And then in the meantime, we're just gonna add the remaining ingredients, and you will see that for this one, I'm gonna use a whole kilogram of quark, or in this case, beer. So that's really the main ingredient here. Makes a lot of squeaky noises here. Right. And we are gonna also add some sugar, 200 grams. And now I'm gonna just go ahead and mix that a little bit so that the egg yolks and the quark and the sugar are just nicely incorporated. Okay. And where's the spatula? We just want to make sure that also there's no egg yolks remaining on the bottom of the bowl. Okay, then we're gonna take some of the cornstarch, just 40 grams. And obviously, if you have the vanilla pudding, you can use that here. But a lot of real Germans, they will tell you that that's not the classic recipe to use the vanilla pudding. Now my scale has to work. There we go. And we're gonna use some vanilla extract. So also for the vanilla, so the typical vanilla that you a lot of times find, it's actually, you need to read the labels correctly because a lot of times it's not the actual vanilla, it's an imitation. So you want to make sure it says pure vanilla extract. And sometimes if you read the ingredients on the back of the bottle, it will say that there is some alcohol in it. That's so. I remember the first time I bought actual vanilla extract and they asked me for my ID when I was checking out. I'm like, huh? But it's the vanilla. And I'm just going to use 2 teaspoons. That works out perfectly. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to put some lemon juice in it, and you can use about like 2 teaspoons. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, to be honest. Obviously, depends on how lemony you want it, and if you feel really fancy, you can use the lemon. Wash it first, even with a little soap. And we can just put a little bit of lemon zest into it. That just gives it also nice, just a nice taste. Maybe you could even try it with orange. That might actually be a good variation as well. So I'm gonna mix this. And we're just gonna add the melted butter. And I know it's already 2:30, so if anyone has to leave, no hard feelings, you surely can. We obviously are recording everything, so. And sending out both recipes. So we're gonna wanna mix everything nice and even. That's good. And then for the egg whites, we want to just use our spatula to fold them in, so we are not destroying the air bubbles in it, which will then make our filling nice and fluffy. So in order to do that, you always, so that's something I learned, you kind of want to draw kind of a J with your hand. So you're going to use the spatula and you're going to go this way. And you're just going to fold everything in just until it's nicely and even. And you will see that it's just nice and fluffy. Has anyone been in Germany before and has tasted some cake? Obviously, I'm asking the Americans here, not the Germans.
I guess that's an interesting question. How many of us are in America? And I know we have some people in Germany. I don't know if any of our Swedish friends or Hungarian friends are with us this time, but it's really an international party in here.
Yeah.
But Barrett and Dagmar both say that they've been to Germany and tried the German cake.
Which
I
one?
have as well, and it's delicious.
Do you know which ones?
Does anybody remember what cakes they tried?
We tried Schwarzwälder Kirschtorte, Or what else is there? Linzertorte.
The classic one,
The
as
classic.
Dagmar says.
What is the classic German cake? I'm interested now.
The classic cheesecake maybe that we're making today. Cheesecake, yep.
Okay. Well, see, now you can make it at home.
Exactly.
Okay.
Alicia says they really miss the rhubarb Rahmkuchen
Oh.
and Obsttorte from Barbara.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Linzertorte says Dagmar, and Linda says Sachertorte.
Nice. So you can see now that I hope with the light here, it's just a nice and fluffy filling. So I'm gonna go and get the dough out of the fridge. And you really realize how it's just so much harder now. So it's also a little easier to work with.
We've got a few more cakes being mentioned. Barrett says the coffee and cake, doing that on holiday with his wife. Barbara also says plumkuchen. Rob says Zuckerkirschtorte.
Oh,
And
wow.
Montse and David, princess cake and Linzertorte.
Nice. Those are all good ones, for sure.
Yeah, I like plum cookie. Are you following me along?
No, I heard your name.
So Melissa,
I have to make
I
a
have a
few
question. I
Yeah.
looked away and I missed whether you put the 4 egg yolks into the filling.
Yes, they
You
were
did
the
put them
first
in there.
thing in the bowl.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think you will all get the recipe after the session. So it has all the directions on there as well. Okay. So that's kind of even. Does not have to be perfect. And then really all you gotta do is to fill the filling in. And you can just see how it's a nice, fluffy Käsekuchen filling. And also with this one, I'm gonna put that on the kitchen counter real quick. I'm using the towel.
Dagmar's curious if you're adding fruit, do you need to place it on the dough first?
You can do either or. So you can put a little fruit layer on the bottom, or you can really just put the fruit in and then maybe just press them into the dough a little bit so they're not only on top, but that's completely up to you. I think all of it will taste just well. And obviously you can also make this one and you can add strawberries on this one too. There are so many variations. Getting the air bubbles out. And that's it. So once you have that, you're gonna put it in the oven. You are gonna bake it first for 40 minutes. And I think this one is 350 degrees. You bake it for 40 minutes, and after the 40 minutes, you're gonna put just a little layer of parchment paper on top of it. Or if you don't have parchment, you can put some aluminum foil over it. It will just prevent it from getting too dark on top. And you can either bake it in the middle or you want to bake it in the lower third of the oven. And then you bake it another 35 minutes. And I would also then let it cool in the oven, have the door open. And don't be afraid when you first see your cheesecake, because it will rise and it will look ugly a little bit first, but if you didn't let it set in the oven, it will go down, and then it will just be a nice even layer of cake. And especially for this one, I recommend to really let it cool, put it in the fridge for, I would say at least like maybe 5 hours or so, but really let it cool down or overnight. And that will just let it set completely, let it cool through, and it will just make it taste really, really well. That being said, that's kind of all the steps for today. Let me see. So I have a little over 4 minutes left on my timer. Let me see. Coming along. Is everyone else's cake coming along? I'm gonna go sneak into the camera now, or obviously if there are any questions, please let me know.
Lillian's asking, I think this is for the classic cheesecake that you're finishing up now. Is it 35 or 40 minutes at 350 degrees?
So it's first 40 minutes, and then you put a layer of parchment on top of it, and then you bake it another 35 minutes. So it takes a little longer, that one, to bake, but it's just a big wet filling, so that just takes a little while to bake. And then obviously you can also put this one in a springform pan. That's no problem at all. And yeah, if you check out my Instagram, I post a lot of different cheesecakes, so I will make sure I will post some variations in the future, just so you can mix it up a little bit. And as I said, you can use that filling, and you can split it in half. So I would actually, yeah, you can do that at the end. Split it in half, leave half of it in the pan, in the bowl, and add like 1 to 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, and then you're gonna mix that in, and then you can put that half on top of it, and you can just with a fork kind of go through it, and you have a nice marble cheesecake. That's a nice one too. Yeah, any other questions? I hope we're gonna have some German cheesecake fans after this baking session here, and obviously I would love to see some pictures. That would be awesome. Maybe even we're gonna serve it for Thanksgiving. I think I see a question here.
Yes, Barbara just wrote, she's still doing the first one, the pear apple crumble, and it's still in the oven just like yours. Should she let it cool in the oven for about 15 minutes?
Yeah, 10-15 minutes would be fine. Although I think, so this one is, the first one is not so sensitive, I would say. So you can take it out of the oven. It's just obviously a nicer transition first to let the cool air go into the oven and then take it out. But it's especially important with the classic one because, as I said, it will rise a lot. And then if you take it out and put it directly on the kitchen counter, you have all the cold air and it will probably go like down really fast. So we don't want that. We want to give it some time to rest and just let it do its thing, and then it will just be a nice cake afterwards. And I'm gonna bake this one as well, and I'm gonna post a picture of it, and so you can see how it looks like.
Yeah, we put your Instagram in the chat, so if anyone wants to go follow her, Melissa, so that you can see how the finished products look. We can talk for the next couple of minutes. Maybe we can see the finished first Käsekuchen. Dagmar's asking if you can already tell us what we'll be making next time. It won't be next Saturday. We're taking the weekend of Thanksgiving off, so everyone can enjoy, hopefully, some much needed family time, very safely, hopefully, as well. But the week after, so December 5th, if you could say what we'll be making then.
Yes, we will make some German Brezeln, so some Laugenbrezeln, and so it's the pretzels. The German ones are a little bit different. We also eat them differently, and I'm going to show you a few spreads also. So we have something in the evening. It's called Vespa. That's where we have the typical German bread, and we have the cold cuts. We have the cheese. Some cut vegetables with it, and I'm just going to show you a little bit some spread, some cheese, I'm probably gonna make a little board of how you could serve it. And honestly, the pretzels, they are so easy to make. Yeah, I'm excited, and I hope you too. And it's just also fun to try to form the pretzels. I want to see some nice artists out there. But yeah, it's honestly, it's really easy, and it's also a great dish that you can freeze and you can keep it. And yeah, so it's a German tradition. It's something that I asked my dad to bring me when he picks me up from the airport. As soon as I land in Germany, I want a Buddha plate, so that's just we love just plain pretzel with some butter on it. it's just really good. Yeah, so that's what we're gonna make, and I hope I see every one of you after you're all energized after eating some turkey and some stuffing and all of the good stuff. So my timer actually just went off, so I'm gonna check. Yeah, I think that looks good. So I'm gonna go and take it out. Actually,
While you're doing that, maybe you could answer also, Montse and David are curious if you could send out a favorite recipe for cooking the goose, if you have one.
okay, yeah. Maybe my grandmother will share it.
Secret family recipes, oh.
The thing is though, I'm not sure if anyone can relate, but when I asked my grandmother for a recipe, there's no written recipe. In German she says, ich mache das einfach aus dem Handgelenk. I just make it out of my wrists. I'm just winging it. I'm like, great. Does not help me any. So I'm asking her to list down the recipe, to list down the ingredients and everything so I can write along. And usually she's like, she says something, then she remembers something else that she forgot to say before. And then she tries to tell you how, what the directions are. And then all of a sudden, and also you have to do this before. And I'm like, okay. So it's an art to then use that recipe, but once you figure it out, you're good. The good old cooking.
Michelle also said that the best Vespa is at your mother's.
Okay, so we're gonna take out the cake. There we go. So I'm gonna switch the view a little bit. No, I think you can see it. Oops. So you see that the sides are just a little golden, and that's all you need. And then it like jiggles a little bit, but that's completely it. So now I'm just gonna let it cool, and then I'm gonna enjoy that later after some goose and the rotkraut, which is the red cabbage and all other goodies. And yeah, it tastes great when it's completely cooled down. If you feel really fancy, you can put a scoop of vanilla ice cream on top of it as well, though. But I don't think you need it for this one because it's gonna be nice and moist because of the quark mixer. So yeah, that's your first German cheesecake right there. Käsekuchen. I hope anyone's cake maybe ready soon as well. I might have been a little before some others, but I would love to see put the other one in. Is that what my mother said? Okay. Good call.
You're getting some supers and some bravos and some yummies as well. But I think maybe just like last week, we'll ask all of you to share your pictures of your finished products once they come out of the oven. So both the pear or apple crumble and also the classic cheesecake, whichever, if you were making both, or whichever one you decided to make. But I think we should all give Melissa another round of applause for a super fun baking episode of Deutsche Küche in den USA and teaching us all about cheesecake and quark and what we can do in the US.
Bravo.
Wenn die Stimme gibt.
Dankeschön.
Danke. And as we said, the next episode will be December 5th, and you'll get a follow-up email on Monday with a link to register and hopefully the new recipes as well when you register for the brezeln and the dipping sauces. You can also always subscribe to our newsletter on our website for the Goethe-Zentrum and just keep up to date with all of our digital programs and events that are happening right now. And if you have any questions related to courses or cultural programming, you can also send me an email. I'm going to type my email now in the so that you have it. You can also send your pictures here if you don't want to or don't have social media to post them to the social media. And I think that's it. Melissa, do you have anything else?
No, I'm really happy that you guys are joining, and also especially for the ones taking along. And I want to see the results, please. And I want to know if we have some new German cheesecake fans out there. And I'm looking forward to the next session. And in the meantime, happy Turkey, happy Thanksgiving, and bis bald. Auf Wiedersehen.
Bis bald.
Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Ciao.
Bye.
Hi, Mom.
Cheers. Ciao. Bye.
Take
Sounds
care,
good.
girl. Tschüss, Melissa.
Ciao.
Cheers.
Yes.
Oh, say it now, sweetie. Say it now.
Danke.
Bitte. Tschüss.